last point, and I think this has been the real challenge for Web 2.0 as an economic movement, and that's the belief that Web 2.0 is free, that all software and services should be just given away for free. That's a very nice idea, but it's very hard to build a business on free. Money has to come from somewhere. And I think one of two things tends to be happening in very young Web 2.0 companies. Either they decide that the product is free and they'll figure out later how they'll make some money, and I'd say that's a vast majority of Web 2.0 companies. We'll get enough customers, and then we'll figure out how to get money from them. The second model is to have a business model. Maybe it's a data services model. Maybe it's an advertising model. Maybe it's a lead generation model. All of those could be very viable. But those models aren't particularly transparent to the customer. And that's a real problem, I believe, in this current marketplace, where there is the perception of free, but something else is being sold. And I believe you must be very transparent and very open with your customers in the market today so that they understand how your business works. Not only to give them confidence that you're a company that will be around in the long run, but also to let them have the decision-making power about how they want to work with you. When a company finds out after the fact that you've been selling their personal data or their demographics, or you've been somehow making money on the backs of their participation in your service, that will backfire, that will be a problem, that will bring your business to a very bad place. Now, Web 2.0, and I think I may have even said this when I was here in March of last year, has created a lot of hype, most certainly. But I'm not so sure, as so many people worried even a year ago, that the web was another bubble. It certainly is not an economic bubble. My belief is that not enough money has been invested into Web 2.0 companies in order to demand inflated values that lead to this bubble scenario. But by the same token, and I know this is a little bit hard to read here, Web 2.0 hasn't created a lot of wealth yet for the entrepreneurs who are working in this field. Especially when you think about this in a relative basis to the earlier phases of the web. In the era of the flat web, companies like Netscape and Yahoo and Adobe and AOL all did very well in growing real businesses. They went public, they made a lot of money for themselves, their founders, their investors. In the dot-com era, for all that we now disparage the bubble of that time, the dot-com era created tens of thousands of dot-com millionaires. Companies like eBay and Amazon, Salesforce.com, and most recently Google are all examples of wealth creation in that second and third phase of the transactional web. Today, it's very hard to really identify wealth creation in the Web 2.0 space. There just really hasn't been that on the scale that you've seen in past iterations. Certainly, one could argue that Facebook has a big valuation. Now LinkedIn has a very large valuation. But that's paper value. It hasn't created the real wealth that we've seen in other economic development cycles. Now, I do think that there is still wealth yet to be created. There are many young, still small Web 2.0 companies that will have reasonable exits and certainly attractive relative to the capital that's gone into them. But these are companies that will sell in the market to, and I believe we will see a great deal of M&A activity through the remainder of this year. These are companies that will sell for $20 to $50 million, a very nice payday for a young founder, but again, on a relative basis, not that kind of big economic growth that we might have expected given all of the hype and energy that has gone into the discussion and the defining of Web 2.0. I think the other challenge with Web 2.0 and where we are in the market today is one that is about reach. Let me explain a little bit what I have come up here with. This is you've seen the long tail graph and the idea that on the left side of the graph there are a lot of people who are viewing the same things. And on the right side of the graph, there are a few people, but lots and lots of them in aggregate, who are all finding something that appeals to them on a blog, on a website, this sort of thing. So there's essentially this idea that there's something for everyone in the web today. Well, here's what I think is happening, and what we don't talk about very much. That most of the activity is on the left side of that line. They're the same tens of millions of people who have spent a great deal of time on lots and lots of sites, and they've made a few businesses successful, but to the larger degree, we haven't seen a breakthrough to the other side of that line, to the mass market. And there are a number of reasons for that, I think. Reasons that have to do with transparency and trust. An average consumer outside of a technical area like Taipei or Silicon Valley or London, they don't know about blogs. They don't trust blogs. They don't understand about these new widgets and different interactive websites. All of this is still new, and they haven't had a reason to move through, and they haven't had a reason to trust it. It's a convenience issue, convenience of access. How do I get to all that good stuff that's out there on the internet? I know it's there somewhere, but I just have this mobile phone, or I just have an old computer. How do I get access to it? How do I find information? And when I do, it's still just hard. We need to move through to a period of greater design flexibility that really appeals to a much broader market. And I think that's a challenge of Web 2.0 and a challenge that lives before us. And I think that the last challenge here is, and I'm sure we could account for many more, but it is one of how do I get as a consumer what I want, when I want it, and where I want it? And those are the kinds of questions I think we'll get to answer in this next phase of the web. And that's the phase that I think of now as the distributed web. Now, if you think about the phases of the web before, the flat web was just about putting up a presence. Hello world, here I am. And the transactional web was more about, hello world, come here. I'll be a portal for you so that you can see the rest of the world, or I'll aggregate a lot of customers onto my site. Certainly the social web was about that in mass. Everybody come here and everybody share with one another and tell everybody where you are and bring it, the party's over here. It was a big aggregation effort. The difference, I think, in the distributed web is that it's not about aggregating, it's about syndicating. It's about how can I take my information, my data, my site as a service provider and make it available anywhere anyone wants to get it and on any device they want to use. It's about not asking people to come to my site or use my application. It's about taking my application, taking my data, taking my site, and spreading it out into the world wherever people are. That's the real opportunity, I think, in the distributed web. The distributed web assumes connectivity virtually everywhere, and while we aren't to that place yet, I think the foundations are there for ubiquitous connectivity, whether it's by Wi-Fi or landline or cellular networks, Bluetooth or RFID. I think all of these technologies will play a role in the distributed web, and there will be layers of networks. It's just not about the local area network, the Internet of Things, the connection of devices in an RFID network. All of these layers, physical technology layers, will play also among, I think, what are more figurative layers, layers like social networks. How do our personal interactions, how does our social graph affect and work as a network across the physical layers of connectivity? All these are questions that